So now back to the dragon pit. She's waiting to die. She suspects that the queen is trying to save her, but she doesn't understand why. And suddenly she's scooped up by a saber scythe into his mouth. So she's in this like dragon's mouth with all of its saliva and everything. And she's scooped up and flown away. And she's just like rumbling around inside of the saber scythe's mouth and like almost drowning, you know, the book says, in its saliva. And she's kind of going in and out of consciousness, and she's in there in a ride for a very long time. And when they finally arrive and the dragon spits her out, she's in the burn and Khan is there. They have a little quarrel, but basically he says, I just saved your life. Go get cleaned up and we are going on a little journey together. And all Rave can think about is how she is going to kill him, she's going to escape, and then she's going to go back and get vengeance on Rek. So that's all she cares about. So she's trying to find a way to escape Khan, but she still has this iron pin in her that Rek shot her with that has disabled her ability to, you know, commune with the creators. And Khan has put her in iron shackles. So she also has those, and she's like tied up. So she doesn't have a lot of freedom because she keeps threatening his life. Like she keeps threatening to kill him. So he's like, I can't unshackle you because you keep threatening me. You keep saying you're going to kill me, and that can't happen. So he takes her to this house that's kind of run down. She gets the sense that this house is special, but that it's been let go, like over time. Like it hasn't been visited as much as it once was, but that it had this charm to it, and she's really drawn to it and thinks that it's special. And it seems like this is something she remembers in her like subconscious, that this is a place that she remembers. She can't quite put her finger on it. And then they go on a little journey through town. Now at this point, the tension is so palpable. There's so much chemistry between them. They are having little quarrels all over the place. Rave is incredibly stubborn, and she just has all this spite against everyone that she's taking out on Khan. But Khan knows who she is, and he's being extremely patient with her, but firm. He's being firm, right? So there is a really interesting dynamic happening between the two of them. But I'm just going to read this one paragraph just to give you a sense of the amount of chemistry that we have at this point between them. So he's like, get cleaned up, and then we need to hop back onto Raigun, and I'm taking you to another place. And she's like, hell no, I'm not riding on the back of that dragon with you. Like, that's not going to happen. Just put me back in his mouth. He's like, no, that's not going to happen. And so they're having a spat about that. And she loses, and, you know, eventually she gets cleaned up and realizes she needs to just get over it and ride on the dragon's back with him. But she's like all tied up, and he's like, you have 10 seconds to sit down on this dragon however you feel most comfortable. And after those 10 seconds, that's where you will stay because we are taking off. And so he literally starts counting down, and she's like fumbling around, trying to get comfortable, trying to figure out how to sit there by him without being by him, but also being comfortable, so that because she's tied up and it's going to be a long ride. And also she doesn't want to fall off the dragon. And meanwhile, she's so distracted because she's attracted to Khan, and she keeps getting distracted by the scent of him. She says, creators. We're in Rave's head. And she says, drenched in the smell of leather and the heady blend of his intoxicating scent, this tightening feeling low in my belly yearns for something every other part of me is utterly opposed to. And I consider whether it's prudent to ask this male if he'd like to fuck before I slit his throat. So this, I feel like, basically wraps up the chemistry and the tension and the dynamic between them for the majority of these chapters that we're going over right now. So anyways, she gets on Raigun's back. They take off. It's full of physical tension, as expected. And he's flying them to the capital of the burn called Dom. And when they get there, he takes her to another little dwelling. And this dwelling is like extremely charming and very sweet and has a lot of appeal to it. After some observation and questioning, she realizes this is his mother's home. His mother, who is now dead. But this was his mother's home. And because of that revelation, she is reverenced a bit. As they're about to cross the threshold of the house, she notes that it is tradition in the North, it is tradition where they're at, for someone to offer up a gift in exchange for being hosted in their home. And she's like, I have nothing to give, but I guess what I'll give is to not shed Khan's blood. I will not shed this woman's son's blood in her home. And he's like, what's wrong? And she's like, I don't have anything to give. She doesn't say the bloodshed part. And he's like, no worries. All that is needed is your name. Tell me your name. And she's like, because up until this point, he doesn't know her name. She hasn't said her name. She's just this girl who looks exactly like his dead wife. Okay. And so he says, what is your name? And she says, Rave. And he's like, okay, that's not right. He's like, what is your full name? He's like digging, trying to get more. And when he asks for her full name, a little voice in the back of her head says, Firelark, Firelark, Firelark. But she's like, that's weird. And she's like, no, it's just Rave. And he's like, okay. And he reveals to her throughout this journey that he is Khan. And so now she knows that he is King Khan. But from what she knows, King Khan is the worst king of them all. Like, he is the worst. So in her mind, finding out that he's King Khan is not a relief to her, because from what she knows, King Khan is the most monstrous king of them all. And while they're becoming friends and having all of these moments and kind of starting to build a little bit of trust, a little bit of a bond, he is being really sweet with her, and he keeps calling her Moonbeam. And she doesn't understand why, but we know that it's a term of endearment for her. It's very, very sweet. While they're together and they're having to bathe around each other because he can't let her out of his sight, right? Because she'll either escape or she'll try to kill him. She sees some of his body, and she sees that he has scars all over his body, and he also has burns. The scars on his body are markings, and they look like a constellation in the sky of stars and moons. And she sees that one of the moons is her little wonky moon that she loves to look at, that she talks about all throughout the book, and how that's like her favorite moon to look at in the sky, and she just feels very connected to it. And even when she's about to die, she's like very sad at the thought that she'll never get to look upon that wonky moon again. So it's like a very special thing to her, and she is very surprised to see that as part of the constellation on his back. And while she's in the home, she also sees a lot of like markings and murals in the home, like petroglyphs. One of the designs on the walls is a saber scythe dragon and a moon plume dragon, like together, like in an embrace. I'm picturing like a yin and yang thing with both dragons. So she kind of clocks that while she's there, and she thinks that's really interesting. And she's also starting to realize that Khan treats her very well. He hasn't forced her to do anything. He is protecting himself by keeping her all tied up, but he's always given her a choice. He gave her a choice about getting healed. He did save her life. He gave her a choice about how to sit on the dragon. Like, he hasn't forced himself on her in any way. And she's realizing, like, this doesn't really add up with the description of the tyrant king that I know, but he also could just be a liar because he's a tyrant king. So she doesn't really know what to believe, because what she knows about the king and what she's seeing with her own eyes and through her own experience aren't really adding up. But she decides, for the sake of his mother, for this man who might be a better person than she originally thought, she's gonna reel it in a little bit. It's really hard for her. There's still a lot of stubbornness and tension, and she just can't help herself sometimes. But she reels it in, and they kind of start to develop this friendship. And he makes her laugh for the first time. And she there's a funny scene where she's like eating soup because he won't untie her hands. He's making her eat with her hands tied. And then she starts laughing, and soup comes out her nose, and she's laughing so hard. And they have this moment, and then things get really heated. They start to hook up. She is all about it. And Khan is like, okay, she's coming around. She wants this. She feels our connection. She wants to be with me. And then right before they're about to seal the deal, she's like, as long as you know that this won't mean anything. We're going to do this because we have all this sexual tension, and we might as well just get it out of our systems, but it doesn't mean anything. And Khan's demeanor immediately changes, and he's like, well, no, then this is not happening. If you just want something meaningless, I'm not your guy. She thinks he's pissed. We can tell as the reader that he's really just disappointed. He's disappointed. He knows there's more between them. He wanted more. He was hopeful. He was nostalgic for the past. And because she's been rejected, Rave is now furious. And she is like, I am not staying here. And she's back to her original plan of trying to escape, though she's decided she isn't going to kill him at his mother's house. That would be a very bad thing to do. But she wants to escape, and she wants to exact vengeance still on Rek. She knows that if she leaves, Khan is going to track her down. After he turns her down, she's pissed. He's sleeping on the couch. He's given her the bedroom. It's nighttime. She sneaks out, but it's in the middle of a rainstorm, and it is a terrible thunder rainstorm. Like, it's shaking the house, it's loud, it's wet. And she is going up into the mountains and trying to find a way to escape without him tracking her. And she's up in the mountains and she sees a river below, the river that they saw on the way in. And she's like, I can follow that river back out and I will have, plenty of water to drink along the way. But she's made her way into a spot in the mountain where she's basically between a rock and a hard spot. Like, there is a cliff. There's this really jagged, climb down to the river. The rocks are slippery and everything. And she decides, well, my best option is to climb down these rocks. And she ends up falling, hitting her head, blacking out, and landing in the river. And the river carries her down. And when she wakes up, these men have pulled her out of the river and are speaking a language she doesn't know. And she's just trying to stay alive and get away so that she can continue with her agenda. But that doesn't work, because when she tries to take off, these fate herders show up. And these are like a mythical creature that she thought was just legend, like not real, but they're known to physically force people onto the right path of their fate. And she's trying to make her way back to the river, and these fate herders are blocking her. They are not allowing her to go back to the river, and they're trying to get her to go back towards the men who took her out of the river and beyond them where their tribe is, and there's more people. And she's like, this is awful. Like, this is terrible. This is a terrible idea. But these fate herders are very aggressive, and they force her back. And when she comes back, the people are like still speaking this language she doesn't know, but they're kneeling on the ground. They are bowing. And she interprets that to mean that they are bowing to the fate herders, that these mystical creatures are like assigned to them, and that it's a very spiritual experience for them, and that they are bowing down to them. And she kind of chalks it up to that. And these fate herders herd her and the rest of the tribe through these old dragon bones. It's a dragon that died, that never made it to the sky. And they basically go into like the mouth of the dragon and down the spine, and they're like going deep into this ginormous dragon. And when they get to the end, she's surrounded by this tribe and this woman and this man who appear to be the leaders, like the king and the queen of the tribe. They have a baby, and she notices that like the king is very loving towards this baby. He like kisses the baby and is very engaged with his wife and the child. And that tugs at something inside of her. Woman starts talking to Rave and is speaking English to her. And she's like, thank God she speaks my language, like that we can communicate. So this woman who can speak some broken English is explaining to her that Rave is this prophesied savior that they've known about for a long time. They have more pictograms like showing this prophecy, and they call her Kolu. And she's saying, you are Kolu. You came to us on the river. And she's showing her like the prophecy, the pictures. Amongst the pictures, there are 3 moons, one for each dragon. So there's a saber scythe moon, a molten maw moon, and a moon plume moon. And she says, it was foretold that the fate herder would bring you to us, that your offspring will tether the moons to the sky forever. So they're like, you are the one that is going to save us from the falling moons that threaten our world, that threaten our existence. And the prophecy is that your child will be able to tether the moons to the sky so they don't fall anymore. And she's like, you guys are all crazy. Like, I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. And they're performing some kind of ritual. They have killed a kulk, which is some animal that, I don't know, I think it's like a dog or something like that. And they're performing this ritual with blood. They're draining the blood from this animal, and they're like painting with the blood. And these men, these warriors that are there, are getting painted in this kulk blood. And the woman is trying to bathe Rave and like clean her up. And she's like, this is part of the ritual. Like, we must clean you up. And after she tells her the prophecy, Rave is like, you're up in the night because I will never carry offspring. She reveals through her thoughts that she takes a tonic to make sure she doesn't ever get pregnant. And she will never not take that tonic, and she will never carry offspring. So she is certain about this. And she's just like, whatever, you guys are crazy. And this woman explains to her that she is going to go to this Tuca trial after they get her bathed up and they're done with like the cult blood and all of that stuff. And this is a trial that's ordained by the creators and that's approved by the king and the queen. And she's like, my gosh, another trial, right? She's like, fine, like, let's just get this over with. She's like, they think I'm going to magically produce some world-saving offspring. Like, they're insane. And at the end of this, the tribe is dispersing and the fate herder comes up and is nudging her in a specific direction. And it has put some of the cult blood from its nose onto Rave in the effort to nudge her forward. Now, before we go on, we continue with these journal entries. They've taken her from her kingdom, from her home where her parents died, and they've taken her to Dom, the capital of the Burn, which happens to be where Khan took Rave, just prior to her escape. And she was brought there by Molten Maz, basically forcing her there. And Slatra, her moon plume, she's pissed. She's following her and the Molten Maz all the way to the Burn, and she's fighting, and she's probably not going to win. But Elwyn understands that she must do this fight for her. But she's praying to the gods that Slatra will give up and turn around and go back to Erythia, because moon plumes cannot survive in the Burn. Remember, is very hot. It is the hottest place there is, and Erythia is the furthest place from the sun. It is the coldest place. That's where the moon plumes live, in the ice and the snow and the cold. They cannot survive in the Burn. So she's begging the gods to whisper to the dragon, Slatra, to turn around and go home and stay in Erythia until Elwyn can come back, until she's old enough for coronation and she can come back to her kingdom and reign. And at the very end of that journal entry, Elwyn says, moon plumes don't survive in the sun, and I can't lose her. My heart can't take another hit. I'd rather die than watch her turn to stone. I think that's foretelling. I think that's some foreshadowing here. We shall see. Okay, as I was reading these chapters, I completely forgot about the fate herder and the tribe. Like, I remembered as we came up upon it, but since it had been a while since I read the book, I completely forgot about that part. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that she goes through all of that. So anyways, now my memory is recharged and I kind of know where we're going. But given even that this is my third time reading it, I'm still picking up on new things here and there. And there are lots of things that I'm like, wait, is that foreshadowing? Because I can't remember all of the details. And so I'm still having like a really great experience reading this for the third time. I just can't say enough how much I love this book, but I'm going to shut up. We're going to move on because I can't wait to read the rest of this book. And we are at the beginning of chapter 40. And I will not go 20 more chapters without updating you because this was a lot of information. So anyways, way to make it through that. Let's pick up at chapter 40 and I'll be back with you guys real soon. Okay, you guys, I didn't wait so long to update you this time, but I'm kind of at a weird angle because right now the sun is coming through so bright. You can see like very harsh shadows. And normally I like my natural light, but right now it's kind of crazy. So I'm trying to not be in the direct harsh light, but there might be some weird shadows. Anyhow, we're going to go ahead and go through chapters. So like we left off basically right at the beginning of chapter 40, and we're going to talk about 40 through 44. So I'm at the beginning of 45 right now, and I just wanted to finish up kind of where we left off. So they are ushering Rave to somewhere. This clan is ushering Rave somewhere, and she doesn't know, but they're taking her somewhere. And they go to the crater of Orva, which is the fallen dragon that they worship. It's a very small dragon that fell from the sky that didn't shatter but left a big crater. And they kind of like worship it as like this was a sign to them that they were saved from this dragon moon that fell. And so everyone's like putting down flowers and stuff, and Rave is asking about the dragon and how it ended up there, and they talk about it falling and the clan like rolling it to the edge of the crater and what it means to them. And we get a little bit of insight into how the dragons die. So sometimes when they know they're going to die, they will, fly up into the aether and harden into a moon. But other times the Fae have killed them, and so they'll die on the ground, or they'll die like in war, or some other kind of like natural cause where they never make it up into the sky. So there are some dragon bones down on the ground in their world, and we see those kind of as she's traveling to this crater. She's talking about these dragons and how sometimes they're killed by the fae that live there, sometimes they're killed for other means, but over time they kind of go back into the ground, and then the fae, the people of this world, are digging up this dragon blood, and it's like a resource to them. And we don't have a full understanding yet of what that dragon blood is for them, but it's definitely a resource that they use. Basically just how exploited they are and how the fae and their customs and their practices have interfered with the natural life of these dragons. So I think that's going to become important later, the dragon blood, because obviously it's a resource. Siza is the woman that's been like, you know, telling Rave what to do and what's going on. And as they get through the crater, they end up at this fighting ring. These two men present her with these malmers, which are basically these like tokens of like a pledge that they're making to her. And Siza says, you need to accept these malmers. And she's like, why? She's like, because they're fighting for you. So these two men are in this ring for her fighting, and she's trying to understand, like, are they just trying to entertain me? Are they, and Siza's like, they're fighting to the death. And she's like, why would they fight to the death for just to entertain me? And she's like, no, they're fighting for the opportunity to bind with you, basically to marry you and procreate with you. They're trying to win you because it would be a great honor for them to bind with this legend that whose children are going to save the world. By the time she figures this out, one of them has already won and killed the other one and like beheaded him. She's suddenly realizing that this man is presenting the head of the other man to her and saying, I won, and now you and I can be together. I am the rightful winner of you. And she's like, F you, I don't belong to anybody. I don't want to do this. This is not the life that I want. I don't want to have children. I don't want to be with any of you men. I don't want to bind with you. I have other plans. She says, I will fight for myself. Like, let me go into the fighting ring and fight for myself. Because she's an accomplished fighter and assassin, you know. So she's killed men before. So she's like, I'll fight for myself. Like, I'm not going to bow down for this clan and this man. Like, this isn't what I want. They're like, this is a very odd request. We weren't expecting this. And so they ask the Oa, who is like the chief or the queen of the tribe. And she says, we've thought about it and we decided that as long as the Fate Herder doesn't intervene, we will allow you to fight. So Rave goes into the fighting ring. She starts fighting with Hawk, who was the winner of the last fight, to fight for her freedom, essentially. And, you know, she's hanging in there. She's holding her own, and they're fighting. And Hawk, in the middle of the fight, releases this hidden serpent that he was holding on to, like throws it at her, and this serpent bites her. And it turns out that this bite is poisonous. So as Rave is fighting, this poison is going through her veins, and pretty soon she's getting kind of woozy, she's getting confused, she's losing her balance, she doesn't have as much control over her body anymore, and Hawk uses this opportunity to pounce on her and hold her down, and he basically is saying, submit to me, say that you like give up, say that you submit to me. And she's like, I'm not going to submit to you. Like, I'd rather die than submit to a man and live this life that you guys want for me. This is not what I want for myself. Before anything further can happen, the crater, like the ground, starts to shake, and everyone is looking around trying to figure out what is happening. So in swoops Raigan and Khan comes down and he starts speaking with the Oa, and, you know, as it turns out, this used to be his clan. He used to be like a leader in this clan. He left after his pa died and became king, but he has some clout within this clan. And he says, you know, you cannot hold her to this. She did not grow up in this clan. She has never been a part of it. She is not part of our tradition. She didn't agree to this. She doesn't even know about this tradition. So you can't make her follow the rules. And they go and consult their books and their wisdom and their history, and they basically come back and say, blood has already been spilt for this cause. And so because blood has already been spilt, we have to finish this out, and there has to be a resolution, because otherwise, like, we're going to have bad luck, basically. Like, the gods are going to frown down upon us, and we're going to be punished for spilling this blood without there actually being a favorable outcome. So he says, okay, then in that case, let me fight in her place. I will fight for her freedom, and I will put her honor above my own. Meaning, let me go in and fight for her, and if I win, she is free to do whatever she wants, because her honor and her win will be greater than anything Hawk has. And if she chooses to walk away, then that's what she chooses, and it will have been won honorably. And they agree to this. So Khan goes over, he takes off his shirt, and so you can see like all of his tattoos, and he bends his knee in front of Rave, and he offers her his Malmur. And this Malmur is this stone carving of 2 dragons in an embrace with a saber scythe and a moon plume. As he's offering her this Malmur, she's again studying the tattoos on his back. And again, she sees that wonky moon that she's so drawn to, and it's on his back. And she just feels so called to it that she bends over and touches his back and goes for that wants to touch that little moon. She's just so drawn to it. And he hurries and gets up and goes into the fighting ring. And she's kind of left with all of these unresolved feelings. Before the fight, Khan says something to Reigen, who is like perched up above the crater, like waiting for him and watching everyone. And it's keeping everyone on edge. And he speaks to Reigen and says, I'm going to do this fight, and you have to honor it no matter what. So even if they kill me, even if Hawk kills me, you can't burn down, you can't kill everybody. Like, you can't, burn down the crater and everyone that's in it because you're angry that they killed me. Like, I'm agreeing to this fight, and I want you to honor it. And Reigen is not happy about this. He blows fire away from the crater, like blowing steam, and you can tell he's really not happy about this. But he agrees. He's like, all right, this is what Khan wants me to do. He flies off. Well, everybody else is like crouched down, scared of the dragon, scared of him breathing fire. And when Rave goes down to crouch down, she sees all of these runes on her body, like they all become illuminated with the dragon fire that's in the air. And it's apparent that she has many, 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 many runes on her body. And some of them have like this luminous quality to them, like a moon plume. Nobody else really notices in that moment except for Siza. Siza notices, and she makes a comment like, oh, I understand now. The reason why you won't just agree to all of these terms is that you're unbreakable. Seeing all these runes on her body is proof of all of the wounds that she's endured, how strong she is, what a fighter she is. And so she's like, well, obviously you're unbreakable, so no wonder you want to make your own choices and don't want to do what everybody else wants you to do. Like, you've earned the right, kind of. Nobody else has seen these runes. It's just those 2. Okay, the sun finally moved to a place where it's not shining so harshly directly into my window, so this is much better lighting. Okay, so where were we? So Reigen leaves. Siza recognizes that Rave has all these runes and that she's unbreakable, and Khan goes into the fighting ring. Well, no surprise, he ends up beating Hawk. He is the honorable, rightful winner of the fight. And we really get the sense from all of these different things that Khan is a very honorable man. So we know that he could have been Oa and used to be a leader of the tribe, of the clan, but he passed it on to somebody else. We know that he acknowledges the customs of the clan, despite the fact that he's the king and he probably doesn't need to. But he follows their tradition and he does it the way that they deem appropriate. And then he tells Reigen, like, don't freak out if they kill me. This is the deal I made, and it's okay. You really get a sense that he's a really good male, that he's a good king, and he has a good heart. and you can trust him. He has honor, right? We'll obviously get the sense that he's willing to do pretty much anything for Rave and that he just wants the best for her. He doesn't want to force her into anything. He wants her to be able to make her own choices. And so Khan has won this fight, and now Rave is free to make her own decisions. The only problem is that Rave is now like overtaken by this poison and by the injuries she received while she was fighting, losing blood. And now she's basically like losing consciousness and very weak and can't function. And so Khan scoops her up, hops onto Raigun, and he decides he's going to take her home. He stops and gets her stabilized with a healer on the way, just enough to stabilize her for their long flight back to Dom. And Dom is basically the capital of the burn. It's where the palace is. It's where the king and all of his administration lives, and is also where Khan grew up. So it's like his childhood home. It's where his mother and father lived and where they ruled the kingdom from. So it has a lot of history there. I forgot to mention, she also kind of is triggered by this Malmer. Like she kind of has this like flashback, which is like a memory of them together where she is wearing the Malmer on her chest and they're being intimate. And it's a quick vision, but it's like kind of she's starting to have these flashbacks. At the end, when he scoops her up and is taking her back to Dom, we see her on the dragon with Khan, and she now has the Malmer on her neck, nestled in her chest, in the same way that she remembered having it on during her flashback. The other thing that I think may be significant at some point is that when they challenge each other in the clan to these fights, to the Tuka trial, they beat their chest and they go, Saiza explains that they don't really care about the crown there. Like they don't honor the crown. That's not a system that they operate under. They have their own rules, their own royalty, their own kind of like leadership. And that all they care about is strength. And the strength is measured by Reidi. And when they go to challenge each other in the ring, they beat their chest. From what I understand, they're beating their chest for the amount of Reidi that they're challenging for. So if they have 4 Reidi already, they are challenging to get 5 Reidi, to have more strength, to be recognized within the clan. The maximum Reidi that was available prior to this fight was 5, and the Oa has 5. They're the strongest member. However, we know that Khan also has 5. When Pa died, Khan, passed on his role to the next strongest person in the tribe, following the rules there. And now that he's back fighting for Rave's honor, he is fighting for 6 Reidi. But that is like unheard of. Like he beats his chest 6 times. And everyone's kind of like, we've never seen this happen before. We've never seen more than 5 Reidi. Not much else is said about that, but I feel like that's foreshadowing of some kind, or information that is going to become important later, maybe even in the sequel. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there because it's obviously in the book for a reason. Now we're at the beginning of chapter 45. They're in Dom, and we'll kind of see what happens. We're still getting some diary entries. But just to make things easier to follow, I'm going to summarize all of the diary entries all together at the end of this section. So I'll be back. I'm so addicted to this book, even though it's my 3rd time reading it. I just can't help myself. It is so addicting. It is a almost 700 page book, and I'm engaged with every single page. Like I can't stop turning the page. Sarah is such a brilliant author, like such a great writer. I can't wait to read the sequel. But let's go over chapters 45 through 59, and then I'll kind of sum up what we've learned through the diary entries. But I think that'll be the end of this vlog, and the last third of the book will be the final vlog in this series. So I'm looking at, I took notes so I don't forget anything. So if I'm looking down, that's because I'm looking at my notes. So chapter 45, we switch, and we're now in Khan's point of view. So they've arrived in Dom, and he is carrying Rave, who is limp. She's kind of been in and out of consciousness throughout the flight, and she's not really with it. Okay, and by the time they get there, she is basically unconscious, and he's trying to hurry in with her and get a healer He's also trying to keep things on the DL because obviously everyone in that palace knows who Rave is. They know that she's Elwyn, and he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to draw attention to her or draw attention to the situation because they really don't want Tyroth to find out that she's alive. His sister Vea, he's very, very close to Vea, and they have a really good relationship, and she's very boisterous. Right as he walks in, she's like there, and he's like, great, now I have to get out of this situation with Vea so I can go find the healer for Rave. And she's basically not going to let him. Like, who is that? What's happening? So she ends up seeing beneath the blanket and sees that it's Rave. And she's like, what the crap? What is happening? Who is this? Why are you carrying her? And why is there blood everywhere? Because remember, they spilt all that Coke blood at the beginning of the fighting ritual. That's like part of it. And so she had blood all over her, but it wasn't all her blood. However, she did lose a lot of blood. So there's just like this big mess. And finally, Vea's like, okay, we'll figure this out later. Let me help you find a healer. And they go to find Agni. Agni is the sister of Bia, who was the healer that we saw earlier when Rave got her back healed from all the whipping. Agni is working on healing her, and Pyrrhok comes in, who's another character, and he's like, whoa, who is that? Why is she here? What's going on? And everybody's like, we don't know, but we need to get her healed. So while Agni's working on healing her, they're having a conversation, and Vea's like, are you sure that it's her? He's like, I am sure. She compared the Chancellor's dick to a microcock. He's like, I knew it was her the second she did that. So obviously, Rave, even as Elwyn, was very like brazen and outspoken, right? And so they're like, oh, that does sound like her. And they're like, well, how could she possibly be here? She's dead. Like, how, this can't be her. How could this be her? Where has she been? And he's like, I don't know the answer to any of your questions. I just accidentally found her. I saw her at the club, and then again, I found her in a prison cell. She has no idea who Elwyn is. She only knows herself as Rave, and she has no recollection of anything in her life prior to the last 23 phases. Now remember, they're Fae, and they're like over 100 years old, so it's been like 23 years or whatever. Obviously, they have very long lifespans, but he's like, she doesn't remember anything for the past 23 phases. That's basically how long she's been gone. And Vea says, well, if she has no recollection before 23 phases ago, how do you explain the fact that she uses her middle name as her name? And so that's when we learn that Elwyn's middle name is Rave. So her name is actually Elwyn Rave Navan. So that is kind of a big breakthrough, like plot twisty moment. He's like, I don't know. I can't explain it. I just know that she doesn't know who she is. They're like, how do you know she's not lying? How do you know this is for sure who she is? And he's like, I know it's her. And when she was in the prison, there's a truth tune who discerns truth. And the truth tune said that she was telling the truth when she said that she didn't know where she came from and she had no memory before 23 phases ago. And so everyone's kind of like, none of this makes sense. But okay, we've got to get her healed, and then we'll figure all of these details out. Meanwhile, we have to keep everything hush-hush because we cannot risk that Kadok or Tyroth will find out who she is and that she's alive. And Vea says to Khan, and you're sure you saw Slatra fly off? And he's like, I am sure. I have been miserable over this for the last 23 phases. I am certain that I saw Slatra fly off, go into the sky and harden and die. So they're like, okay, something's going on here. So we know that at the end of Elwyn's life, Slatra flew off and hardened into the sky. But we're still very, very unclear about what happened to Elwyn, how she died, and also how she's still alive. Khan also explains to them that while in the prison cell, he also learned that she, even though she presents as a null, she actually has two elemental gifts. She has the elemental song of Claude and of Boulder. And he's like, I don't know about the other two. And so it's kind of a hint that she at some point had communication with probably all of the gods. Because Vea's like, but she's a Navan. She has Navan blood, Khan, and you know what that means. Like, you know what that means. And because of that, we cannot let our brothers find her. They cannot find out that she's here. He's like, I know. And she's like, what are you going to do when she wakes up? Like, what are we going to do when she wakes up? He goes, we're going to ease her into the truth, and then we're going to let her make her own choice. And then Vea says, and this is a quote, nobody can suffer what she's been through and not be pitted with a well of dragon flame, whether she remembers her past or not. Tread carefully, Khan, or she'll incinerate herself and turn to ash in your effing hands. So Khan leaves the healing room and he says, I'm taking off. I have shit to take care of, and I can't sit around here while she's healing and she doesn't want me around. Like, I'm going to take care of stuff. I'm going to make sure she's okay, but I'm not going to be here. She asked for space. I'm going to give her space. She doesn't want me around, basically. Because that's where things left off with them before she escaped to the gorge, way back before the Tuca trial. He leaves. Obviously, he's very frustrated. He just went through something pretty traumatic. He almost lost her again. He needs to go blow off some steam. So we follow him to this crater that's kind of like this secret spot that he has where he trains. It's a very basic training spot, but nobody else is there except for a man named Grimm. So Grimm is there, and Grimm follows him to the hidden crater where they train to fight. And Khan basically says, I have a lot of rage that I need to get out. This is not going to be pretty. There's going to be no mercy here. I'm in the mood to fight. And he's like, bring it on. And so they go into the fighting pit and go hand to hand. And it says rage to rage. We don't really know what Grimm's rage is, where that's coming from. He does describe Grimm. I don't know how relevant it is, so I'm just going to put it right here. But it says, he stalks toward me, looking at me from behind the flop of snowy strands, half concealing his face, broad shoulders flexing as he fists his hands at his side. So that gives us a pretty good description of what Grimm looks like, and I'm sure that with time we will learn more about Grimm. And then at the beginning of chapter 47, we switch POVs again, and now we're in Vea's point of view. And Vea is following Rave's healing very closely, and there's a lot of questions. They all have a lot of questions. And Vea's really bothered by these questions. She's trying to figure out what happened, how Rave is here, what happened to Eowyn, how is this happening, what is it that we're missing, what is it that we don't know. After the male Fae all leave, Agni says, I have to tell you something, but I didn't want to get the males all worked up again. And she's like, what was it? And she said, after we got the blood cleaned up, I could see that she had many healing runes. There was one that glows silver, and it's a killing rune. And it's one that no one usually survives from because she was stabbed in the heart. And Vea's like, okay, don't tell the king, don't tell Khan. I'm going to sit with this and figure out what this means, how this happened. And right as they're having this conversation, Pyrock walks up and he's like, what aren't we going to tell the king? And she's like, I'm not going to tell you, But in her head, she's like, that Rave was stabbed in the heart, that it killed her. And that's not the story we were spoon-fed when she left. So something's not adding up. We've never heard before that she was stabbed in the heart. So Pyrock's like, you want to play a game of Scrippy, which is a card game that they play. They're talking back and forth, a lot of banter going back and forth. And from that, we learned that Vea, growing up, she went to the Tuca trial 78 times. So she survived 78 Tuca trials, wherein she fought for herself and won. So she has avoided having to bind with a male and to live the life that her pa and her brothers, or at least the other two kings, wanted her to live. But even though she survived the Tuca trial, she has scars because every time she came back as a winner from the Tuca trial and failed to, bind or get married, her pa and then later her brothers would beat her. So there's obviously a lot of trauma there. While playing cards, they have a bet and Vea ends up winning. And now Pyrock owes her a favor to be claimed at a later time. So I'm sure that will come up at some point. So also during their chat while they're playing cards, she talks about how Eowyn had a diary that she used to write in, and that maybe she can get her hands on this diary and it will explain what happened to Eowyn and make sense of the heart stabbing versus the story that they were told. She's like, she used to keep it in this hidden spot in her room, but it's not there anymore. Pyrock's like, where do you think it is? And she's like, I think she took it back to Erythia. I think I might go to Erythia and see if I can find it. And he's like, Erythia? It's super cold there. She's like, I know, perfect for preservation. So Vea's like certain that the diary is in Erythia and that it's probably been preserved over all of this time because it's so cold there. We also learned that the Vagar mother, so the king's and Vea's mother, died in childbirth with Vea, and because of that, Vea has always been kind of resented in the family. I don't, like, obviously not with Con, but like the other two brothers and her pa also really resented her for their mother dying, which, you know, I think that's why, one of the reasons why they were always trying to marry her off and then would beat her when she came home, because they blame her for the loss of their mother, who was obviously very, like, beloved. They all loved her. And we know from when Con took her to, like, the homes, the secret homes, and he talks about his mom, that, like, he really cared about his mom. Like, she was very special to him and must have been also very beloved by the rest of the family. So at the very end of chapter 47, Vea says, I can't forgive Elwyn for what she did, for leaving me, and for leaving the man she said she loved without even leaving a note. So basically, we're told that when Elwyn disappeared, Elwyn left Con and Vea at some point without a word, without any explanation. And both of them harbor some feelings because of that. Okay, so now we're in Rave's point of view. We're in chapter 49, and Rave is kind of waking up from after all of the healing, after all of the trauma she went through. And she's, you know, really foggy, and all of the events leading up to this point are kind of like coming back to her. And she wakes up and she's in this room, which is Elwyn's room, but she doesn't know that. And she kind of sits up and she's trying to like kind of come to and figure out what she's going to do. She's trying to figure out how she's going to get out of there, because she still wants to leave and she still wants to get revenge on Rek. That is like all she can think about. She's very fixated on it. And she's kind of looking around the room and she's like, oh, this is a nice room. And she suddenly has this flashback. It says, I gripped the burnished mirror, easing it to the side, revealing a hollow cavity in the stone behind. I thread my arm into the hole, pulling out a leather-bound book. I tug close to my chest. And then the vision ends. She's like, that was kind of weird, and it kind of feels like something she recognizes, but she can't quite like put her finger on it. And she's trying to get her bearings, and Vea walks in. Only she doesn't know it's Vea. She has no idea who Vea is. And she kind of walks in, she's like got this fruit in her hands, and she's like chewing this fruit really obnoxiously, and it gets Rave's attention. Number one, because Rave is hungry. She's been sick and healing for days and hasn't eaten. She's thirsty, she's hungry. And there's also like this hint that this was a fruit that Elwyn used to like, okay? She's like, who are you? She's like, I'm Con's sister. And trust me, you don't want to get on my bad side. And Rave's like, you don't like me, do you? And Vea's like, pretty much, you know? And Rave's like, you don't even know me. And Vea's like, well, that's debatable. She's like, what is that supposed to mean? And so it's like this very cryptic encounter with Vea. She says, let me guess. He took you to a quaint hut in the hills, cooked you a meal, then looked at you like he loves you more than life itself. So you ran away, fell down the waterfall, ended up being stripped in a skull full of half-naked warriors. And she's like, how did you know that? And she's like, because I'm magnificent. Okay? I think this is the first character that has come along that rivals Rave. Like, Rave's kind of like attitude and quippiness, you know? So she's kind of met her match here. And Vea's like, I'm also loyal, but I'm intolerable when you get on my bad side. And she's like, and I have yet to decide where you fall. She doesn't know whether she's still mad at Elwyn. She doesn't know if Elwyn/Rave is on her bad side or if there's a better explanation for what happened. Rave's basically like, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you think of me. Go away. And Vea says, Con was brought up constantly being told he's not good enough. He'll never admit it, but in his mind, he doesn't deserve the honor of that being around your neck. Pointing to the Malmer. And then she says, break him again and I'll break you. And Rave goes, what do you mean break him again? Vea just turns around and walks away. And Rave is like so frustrated. She's like, this girl is walking away. She's got that fruit. I'm hungry. She's saying all these cryptic things to me, and I don't know what is going on. Vea's walking away from her, and she just suddenly yells down the hall, Vea! And Vea turns around and is like, she said my name. You know, she's like, I didn't tell her my name. And they look at each other and she goes, what did you just call me? And Rave's like, I don't know where that came from. I don't know a Vea. Like, I don't even know anyone named Vea. Where the hell did that come from? And she storms back and she goes, I'm Vea. Me. Do you remember me? And Rave's like, no, I don't know who you are. It was just a mistake. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I've been wounded and sick. My brain just, I don't even know where that came from. And Vea's like, she remembers me. Like, Vea's just as frustrated. Rave is like, I have no idea what's going on. And Vea's like, I have no idea what's going on, but from two totally different perspectives. And so Vea's really frustrated at this point. She's like, well, she knew my name. Somehow she knew my name. But like, she can't remember other things. Like, this is just ridiculous. So Vea finally confronts her and says, I'm going to work this out. You hear me? I'm going to work this out. And Rave's like, okay, whatever, you're crazy, bye. You know, they're both so frustrated, but they don't really understand where the other person is coming from. So Vea leaves and Rave decides to get up and she kind of looks around. She's looking out the window, trying to figure out where she is. And she's like, well, it looks like I made it to Dom. So this is a really good stopping point. I am going to fill you guys in on what has been coming up in the diary entries alongside all of these updates. And then I think we're going to end there because this is a really good stopping point before we get into the final third of the book. So meanwhile, in Eowyn's diary entries, we read how because she's too sick and too weak to rule, the Vhaegars are moving her to Dom. So they put Eowyn on a molten maw and they're carrying her back. And Slatra is following her because she's bound to Slatra. Like, Slatra's very worried about Eowyn. She does not want to be away from her. So she's trying to follow her. But the problem is that Slatra is from the shade. She is from the ice and the cold. And she's trying to fly to the burn. And she's not built for that. She's trying to follow Eowyn with the other dragons, but her skin is like bubbling and burning in the sun and she's getting holes burnt through her wings and she's really, really suffering. And eventually she falls from the sky. She can't fly anymore because she has so many holes in her wings. And she gets down to the like desert floor and she's crawling, like clawing her way, still trying to follow Eowyn in the sky. And they both make it to Dom and Slatra's in such bad shape that she just claws her way to this dragon hutch that she finds. It's the closest one she can get to. And she curls up in the hutch. And Eowyn and Slatra can't stand to be away from each other. And Eowyn's really not doing well either because of the diadem. And she wants to be in the hutch with Slatra. And the king says, as long as there's guards out there, I don't care. Go sleep in the dragon hutch with her. So they're both sleeping out there in the dragon hutch. And neither of them are in good shape. Both of them are dying for different reasons. And in her diary entry, she says, I'll never forgive myself for taking her from her home. I would do anything to go back to mine again. And while they're there, this girl and this guy start coming and visiting her and inquiring about her and bringing her food and water and trying to help her and the dragon heal. And we basically find out this is Con and Vea. So Con and Vea are kind of like sneaking over to the hutch and like making sure that they're okay and getting to know Eowyn. She writes in her journal entry that Con has lots of scars. Like she notices that he has lots of scars. So we can kind of intuit that he also has been beat by his father and or brothers. But, you know, he's been abused. He's been through a lot as well. They're trying to rehab Eowyn and Slatra. And all Eowyn can think about is how she just needs to get them out of there. Like the only hope of Slatra surviving is if she can get her home. But she's too weak to fly her back. She's too weak because of the diadem to speak with Claude and provide a like protected cold front for Slatra to fly home on. And so they're both kind of just trapped there in this dragon hutch and they can't leave. And they're both really, really sick and not doing well. And now you guys are all up to date. And we are on the beginning of chapter 50. But we're going to go ahead and end this vlog here. And stay tuned because tomorrow I will be posting the final vlog for this book, where we will be going over the final third of the book. So we will pick up where we left off here. And I hope that this has been helpful for you guys. If it is, please make sure that you are liking and subscribing. It's a free way for you to support me and my channel. I really, really appreciate it.